familiarly as Bob Fitrakis. Up next, he has a huge resume, but perhaps he'll permit me to just hit the highlights. He's a professor of political science at Columbus State Community College. He's been a lawyer for many prominent... Were you the lawyer for Bob Kerrey, or just a consultant?
Jesse Jackson's attorney who advised Mr. Kerry.
Okay, great. I want to get that straight. All right. He's written What Happened in Ohio, a documentary record of theft and fraud in the 2004 election with Harvey Wasserman, who will be speaking on Sunday in a panel that I did not organize. He's won 11 investigative journalism awards from Cleveland Press Club, Project Censor, the Ohio Society of Professional Journalists, many, many things. Let me just present Bob. Here he is in the flesh.
All right, glad to be here. Let me get to some of the key points that I think we ought to reflect on and discuss. I've updated the new book. You might want to buy it just for the Trumpish 1984 feel to it, but it does update the strip and flip election. And it will look at what happened during the recount. But one part of the book, we tried to give it a historical analysis, is really what we call the 5 Jim Crows. And the 4th Jim Crow, which I think we're dealing with right now, that was the systematic subversion of democracy throughout the Third World by the U.S. government, and through its intelligence apparatus, as well as its covert operations of its military. So, with that in mind, let me begin by suggesting to you the Russians aren't coming. Okay, the Russians are not coming.
The CIA is here.
Sure, the Russians are probably doing some hacking, so are the Chinese, and so is the largest spy state in the history of civilization, the United States. So let's keep that in
soon to be Israel.
With the known $60 billion. You know, right? I mean, with Trump running amok, saying he's a $54 billion increase in the military. My God, that's the military of the UK, the 5th largest military power in the world. We need to think about what's really happening here. And that is, sure, superpowers attempt to hack each other and gain access. But the problem is that we've privatized elections in this country and given the keys to the kingdom to private companies that can steal any elections they want because they control it all. Yep. Right? We've privatized the voter registration databases. And we have massive problems in my state, Ohio. Does anyone believe that Diebold in 2004 accidentally glitched 10,000 people, all in Cleveland, all in the inner city, 2 weeks before the election? It was just a computer glitch. Or was that an intentional, racist disenfranchisement of voters? We know what's going on, and now they've computerized everything. In my state, who runs the maintenance for the databases for voter registration? Triad. It's run by the Rat family. I just a few days ago talked to the head of Right to Life in Ohio. And I said, how close are you to the Rats? I said, well, they're my major donors. The major Right to Life donors in Ohio maintain the databases in the vast majority of counties in our state. And everyone's saying, well, what about the Russians? Ain't the Russians purging the voters? Wasn't the Russians that purged 24.96% of every single voter in Cleveland in a run-up to the 2004 election? Not the Russians that did it. privatized, partisan, for-profit companies that are doing it to get their people in, whoever their people are. We know there are people in the primary, when the exit polls weren't matching, their person wasn't Bernie Sanders. Because somebody was manipulating the vote in the primary, whoever that was, on behalf of Hillary Clinton. The data, if you look at the gold standard, if you look at the exit polls, we're not talking about the pre-election polls, how you might vote. We're talking about people walking out the door, and you ask them how they voted. We have this tremendous disparity between how people say they voted right after they voted and how those things are actually counted on electronic voting machines with electronic computer central tabulators brought over the internet. And that if this was not the United States, those elections would all be sanctioned and the world would be calling upon them and the UN to be redone.
Yep.
That's the reality. They don't meet the American agencies on development. The American State Department use the exit polls as their gold standard. And we haven't been able to live up to those standards. What they're trying to convince you is that the universal laws of statistics apply everywhere on earth except the United States, where a group of for-profit corporations secretly control the voting codes, the computer codes. And then you say, well, is there any proof of that? Let me just read you a few blurbs, because this stuff is not hard to find. Okay. In 1974, the U.S. General Accounting Office commissioned a year-long study on the risks of electronic voting equipment. In 1975, Roy G. Saltman, an electronics expert at the National Bureau of Standards, warned about the dangers of electronic voting. In his paper, Effective Use of Computing Technology in Vote Counting, he wrote, quote, increasing computerization of election-related functions may result in the loss of effective control over these functions by responsible authorities, and that this loss of control may increase the possibility of vote fraud. What radical wrote this? National Bureau of Standards, Special Publication 500-30. They've known about this stuff. And some of our progressive friends over at The Nation and other publications don't want to go here. Oh my God, it'll be a conspiracy. I mean, you're saying someone could program a computer. I mean, this stuff has been known. Okay, 1975, you remember the Church Committee. In the Church Committee, the CIA admits to having engaged in, quote, over 5,000 benign operations. Benign means it wasn't a bloody damn coup.
Yeah.
It wasn't 800,000 dead Chinese in the year of living dangerously in Indonesia.
Yeah.
They weren't out murdering Patrice Lumumba. They were just rigging elections. That's what they mean by benign operation. Okay, 1980, Iowa Republican Caucus, Manchester Union leader, has an editorial. Here's how they wrote about the election. Quote, the Bush operation had all the smell of a CIA covert operation. Strange aspects of the Iowa operation included a long, slow count, and then the computers broke down at a very convenient point, with Bush having a 6% bulge over Reagan. Bush won the primary over Reagan 31-6, 31.6% to 21.5, and then declared he had the big mo. So when you go back and look over time, what we have over and over again, for example, the first time these computer machines were used in large number, 1988, they brought in New Hampshire, Bob Dole, remember Bush, former CIA director, George Herbert Walker Bush running for president. Bob Dole's up 9 points. They bring in to Manchester, the major city, the famous RF Shuptronics. And I know what you're thinking, give the guy a chance. Just because Ransom Shoup was convicted in 1979 for conspiracy to defraud the federal government in connection with bribe attempts to obtain voting machine business doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Right? You want a good Shuptronic. Okay, maybe not. That's why we changed the name to Danaher and used them in Ohio, in my county, Franklin County, in 2004, and they became famous for the Franklin County fade. That is, you pushed for carry, you went to look away, suddenly the vote had disappeared. We actually named it, gave it its own name. It wasn't a complete flip, it was a mere fade. And we recorded it. Well, there's not an ounce of proof of that. Other than the 500 people who swore under oath that it happened. Okay, so there's no proof of that. Other than Miami County, who said, look, there's cyber votes here. There's 2,500 votes for Bush. We can't explain. That they don't match. There wasn't a 98.55% voter turnout in Concord Southwest precinct. Well, there's no proof. Yeah, there's no single proof. There's tons of proof. Let me read you Roy Saltman, 1988. They're looking at it again. Saltman writes, accuracy, integrity, and security in computerized vote tallying. For who? Oh, that radical group, National Bureau of Standards. What's he conclude? He warns the possibility that unknown persons may perpetuate undiscoverable frauds in electronic voting systems. That if you allow people with secret proprietary software unwatched to come in and program your voting databases, your firmware on your computers, your central tabulators, and it's a non-verifiable system, then your country deserves to have its democracy stolen. Let me just say in conclusion, as someone who watched, as an election monitor, co-wrote the report to the United Nations on the first ever election in El Salvador. I met with the death squads, I met with the FMLN. They could agree on one thing, a large transparent box you could see through, and that it would be open before the international observers like myself, the UN monitors, and every single party, and the votes would be counted. What they wanted would be verified. Could you imagine if the death squads, here's how it's going to work. I've got a private company, friends of mine, they're going to come in and secretly program this shit, okay? And then we're going to tell, hell, my dad was a Teamster. That's mob-style stuff. Okay, we're going to take it in the back room and come out and tell you that Nikki the Greek won, okay? We got a lot of votes. 85% or something. Okay, so that's what's happening here. It's not the Russians we need to be worried about. It's these privatized companies who can, without transparency, program the results they want of our election. Thank you.